They thought it was just a toy, an innocent gift for their daughter. But when the batteries never changed, and the doll still spoke, something felt wrong. When they threw it away, it came back. When they locked it up, it escaped. When they ran from it, it followed. This isn't a story about make-believe monsters. This is real. A family in Houston discovered what happens when a doll refuses to stay dead, and the truth behind what lives inside it will chill you to the bone. Tonight, we uncover the terrifying mystery of the haunted doll. Stay with me, if you dare. It started the winter of 2013, on a quiet street in the suburbs of Houston, Texas. Christmas had just passed, and the Madonia family's living room still smelled faintly of pine needles and sugar cookies. The tree stood tall in the corner, its ornaments glittering faintly under the dim yellow glow of the string lights. Scattered wrapping paper was piled into a bag, and the children's new toys were scattered across the carpet. Among them sat a brand new Elsa doll, the one from Disney's Frozen, the gift every child seemed to want that year. Emily Madonia remembered the way her daughter Aurelia had squealed with delight when she unwrapped it. A plastic Elsa, with a long blue gown that shimmered under the lights, and a tiny silver necklace with a button on it. Press the button, and Elsa would sing "Let It Go" in a cheerful, high-pitched voice. For weeks, the doll was just that ordinary toy. Aurelia played with it constantly, singing along to the song until the lyrics echoed endlessly in Emily's head. Press the button. Let it go. Let it go. Over and over. Normal. Harmless. But then, something changed. It was a quiet afternoon in 2015 when Emily first noticed it. She was cleaning the kitchen when she heard the doll's voice echo from the living room. Only this time, it wasn't English. The voice was Elsa's, but the words rolled out in Spanish. Libra, soy, Libra soy. The melody was the same, but the language was different. Emily paused mid-step, frowning. She asked Aurelia later if she'd pressed some kind of switch. The girl shook her head. Emily looked all over the doll back, sides. Inside the dress butt, there wasn't any button, any toggle, anything to explain the change. At first, she brushed it off. Maybe it was just some factory quirk, a hidden feature. Nothing to worry about. But over the next year, the doll didn't just switch between English and Spanish, it started choosing on its own. Some days it sang in English, other days in Spanish. Sometimes it would shift mid-song. There was no pattern. Then one night in 2016, the doll sang when no one had touched it. Emily was tucking Aurelia into bed when a faint, muffled voice carried down the hallway. At first she thought it was the TV. Then she realized it was coming from the living room. She froze. It was Elsa's voice, clear and eerie in the stillness of the house, singing "Let It Go," followed immediately by Libra Soy. The words drifted through the darkness, cheerful and melodic, yet chilling in their suddenness. Emily walked slowly into the living room. There it was. The doll was sitting in the middle of the carpet, eyes staring blankly ahead. No one had pressed the button. Her husband Matt tried to laugh it off when she told him. It's just a glitch. Probably stuck contacts in the wiring. Cheap toy. Emily wanted to believe him, but it kept happening. Sometimes during the day, sometimes in the dead of night. Once while, the entire family sat at the table eating dinner. The doll's voice filled the room, singing loudly, as if demanding attention. Matt reached over, flipped the switch on the back to off, and tossed it back onto the toy pile. But the voice kept going. Even with the switch turned off, the doll still sang. Weeks turned into months, and the incidents grew stranger. Emily swore she had seen the doll move slightly from where she'd left it. Sometimes she'd leave it on the shelf, only to find it later sitting on the couch. Her kids insisted they hadn't touched it. By 2019, the family had owned the doll for nearly 6 years. They had never replaced the batteries, and yet it never ran out of power, not once. One evening, after the doll's voice startled them awake for the third time that week, Emily decided enough was enough. She grabbed it, muttering under her breath, and stuffed it into a black trash bag. She walked outside in the cold December air, opened the garbage can, and threw it inside with a heavy thud. That should have been the end. But a few weeks later, Aurelia screamed from the living room. Emily rushed in, her heart pounding, and froze. There it was. The Elsa doll sat upright on the family bench, its glassy blue eyes fixed straight ahead. Emily's blood ran cold. She hadn't told the kids what she'd done. She knew they hadn't dug through the garbage. The trash had already been collected days before. There was no explanation. No way. And yet here it was. She picked it up, her hands trembling, and stared into its blank, unblinking eyes. Emily's hands trembled as she held the Elsa doll, its face blank yet somehow aware. She turned it over, checked the seams, pressed the switch on its back again off. Still off. She even tried pulling the necklace button, but the doll remained silent, its painted smile frozen in mock innocence. "Mom," Aurelia's voice quivered. "How did it get back?" Emily forced herself to smile, though her chest tightened. Maybe Daddy brought it back. Maybe he thought you'd miss it. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. That night, she told Matt everything. How she'd bagged the doll, thrown it away, and seen the garbage truck take it. Matt rubbed his face, muttering under his breath. "You're working yourself up," he said finally. "It's just a toy. Maybe one of the kids found it outside and brought it back in?" "No," Emily whispered, shaking her head. "I know it was gone." She wanted to argue more, but there was something about the way Matt's voice cracked at the end, as though he didn't fully believe his own excuse. The next morning, Emily placed the doll in the hall closet, far back on the highest shelf. She closed the door and locked it. Days passed. Nothing happened, till one night Emily woke to a faint scratching sound. At first, she thought it was an animal, maybe the neighbor's cat, pawing outside the door. But the noise was inside the house. Slow dragging sounds, like plastic scraping against wood. Emily sat up in bed, heart pounding. Matt was asleep beside her, snoring softly. She strained her ears, listening. The sound grew louder. Scrape. 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 It was coming from the hallway. Emily slipped out of bed, every nerve screaming at her to stay put. But some dark instinct forced her toward the door. She opened it carefully, the hinges creaking. The hall was dim, lit only by the weak glow of the nightlight plugged into the wall. And there, lying at the base of the closet door, was the Elsa doll, its face tilted upward toward her. Emily clamped a hand over her mouth. The closet door was still locked. How had it gotten out? She backed away slowly, then rushed into the bedroom, shaking Matt awake. "It's out." "It's out of the closet," she whispered, panicked. Matt groaned, sitting up. "What are you then?" He saw the doll, half lit by the nightlight. Its shadow stretched grotesquely along the wall. They stared at it together in silence. Matt finally muttered, "All right." That's it. He got up, grabbed the doll, and stormed out the back door. Emily followed him into the cold night air, her breath fogging in the darkness. Matt pulled out a roll of heavy-duty black garbage bags. He stuffed the doll inside one, tied it tightly, then double-bagged it again. Emily watched him walk down the driveway, past the garbage cans, to the very edge of the street. He slammed the bundle into the bin, clapped the lid shut, and walked back with finality. "There," he said. "It's done. Gone." Emily wanted to believe him. For a while, things were quiet. But 3 days later, when Emily went out to water the plants, her heart nearly stopped. The doll was sitting in the backyard. Not in the garbage. Not in the house. It was perched upright in the grass near the fence, its plastic hand extended slightly forward as if reaching, her stomach twisted. She screamed for Matt, who came running. When he saw it, his face drained of color. No jokes this time. No excuses. "I don't get it," he muttered. "Ash!" The garbage truck came. I saw it take the bags. They stood there in silence, the doll's painted eyes gleaming in the morning sun. Emily whispered, "It doesn't want to leave." From that moment on, the Madonia house changed. At night they began hearing more sound-stainy footsteps across the tile floor, as if little plastic feet were walking when no one was around. The doll would appear in different places, on the couch, at the kitchen table, once even on the windowsill of Aurelia's room while she slept. The children began to cry at night, saying they heard singing in the dark. Sometimes faint, sometimes loud, always the same song, "Let It Go," or "Libra Soy," echoing from the shadows. Emily barely slept. She felt watched constantly, as though unseen eyes followed her around every corner. Finally, in desperation, she decided to get rid of the doll once and for all. This time she didn't just throw it out. She asked a family friend in Minnesota if he would take it far away across states. Her friend agreed, laughing nervously when she explained why. So Emily boxed up the doll, taped the package shut, and mailed it across the country. When she dropped it at the post office, she felt a strange sense of relief. The first time in months, the house seemed lighter. The children slept peacefully. The footsteps stopped. The house grew quiet again. But Emily couldn't shake one thought. Lurking at the back of her mind like a shadow she couldn't turn away from. If it came back once and twice, what was stopping it from coming back again? For a brief while, Emily allowed herself to believe it was over. The house settled into silence. No footsteps padding across the floors at night. No disembodied songs echoing through the walls. The children laughed again, slept through the night without screaming. And Emily herself finally closed her eyes and drifted into something resembling rest. But relief, she soon learned, was only another trick. It began 3 nights later. Emily awoke to a sound of faint knock, rhythmic and deliberate. She sat up, squinting in the dark. Matt stirred beside her. Knock, knock. It wasn't coming from the door, it was softer, closer. From the wall. Emily leaned closer, pressing her ear to the plaster. The knocks continued, but now, there was something else. Faint voice, muffled, like someone whispering through layers of fabric. Deja ear. Emily jerked back, her blood running cold. She knew enough Spanish to understand. Let me go. But the voice wasn't pleading, that it was mocking. By morning, she tried convincing herself it had been a dream, a half-sleep hallucination. But then the children spoke up at breakfast. Mom, Aurelia whispered, her cereal spoon frozen midair. I heard Elsa last night. She was in my room again. Emily's hand tightened around her coffee mug. Honey, that's not possible. Remember, we sent her away. She's in Minnesota now. Aurelia stared at her with wide, frightened eyes. No, she's here. Later that day, the phone rang. It was her friend from Minnesota, the one she had shipped the doll to. You're not going to believe this, he said, laughing nervously. Your haunted doll? She's still here. I taped her to my truck bumper. Thought it'd be funny. But the tape snapped last night. I found her sitting on the porch this morning. Emily's knees nearly buckled. She's still there? She asked, her voice hoarse. Oh yeah, don't worry though. I'm keeping her. Nothing weird's happened. Yet. Emily forced a laugh, but her hands shook as she hung up the phone. Because even as he spoke, she knew deep in her chest that wasn't true. That night, the scratching returned, louder this time. Not at the wall, but at their bedroom door. Emily and Matt froze in bed as the sound grew frantic, urgent, like nails or plastic dragging across wood. Then came the voice again. Libra, soy. Libra, soy. The song was soft, almost sweet, but twisted somehow, warbling and broken, like a child's toy left to rot. Emily covered her ears, tears welling. Matt jumped out of bed, threw the door open. Nothing. The hall was empty. But on the floor, right outside their bedroom, was something that shouldn't have been there. Small blue ribbon. Aurelia's Elsa doll ribbon. Matt cursed under his breath, scooped it up, and threw it across the hall. His face was pale, jaw tight. We're done with this, he hissed. Don't care if it's a doll, a prank, whatever the hell it is. We're not letting it tear this family apart, but deep down, Emily could see in his eyes what he refused to admit. He was scared. The next day, the house felt heavier, darker. Shadows stretched longer across the walls, the air thicker with each passing hour. Even the children grew quieter, as though sensing the weight pressing down on their home. That evening, as Emily tucked Aurelia into bed, her daughter whispered something that made her skin crawl. Said she wants you now. Emily froze. Who? The doll, Aurelia said matter-of-factly, before turning to the wall and closing her eyes. Emily stumbled back, heart hammering. That night, the noises didn't stop. Scratches, footsteps, faint laughter. A song that played endlessly, sometimes in English, sometimes in Spanish, sometimes warped into something unrecognizable. When morning came, Emily went to the living room to find the TV turned on, static buzzing across the screen. And sitting on the couch, though she swore it had been shipped hundreds of miles away, was the Elsa doll. Its plastic head tilted toward her. its dress dirtied and torn, though she had never seen it that way before. Its mouth slightly open, as though caught mid-song. Emily screamed. Matt came running, his face ashen when he saw it. How he stammered. "This isn't possible." Emily could barely speak. "It doesn't matter how. It's here. And it doesn't want to leave." The house was no longer safe. Every room felt invaded. Doors opened on their own. Lights flickered violently. Cold drafts swept through the hallways, carrying with them a faint scent of something metallic like rust or blood. The children no longer played with their toys. Instead, they huddled together, whispering that Elsa was watching. She was. Sometimes Emily caught the doll in places no one had left it, on the dining table, in the bathroom sink, once even balanced on the top step of the stairs, as though waiting. At night, Emily began dreaming of her. Dreams where Elsa wasn't plastic, wasn't small. She was life-sized, her face still porcelain and perfect, but her eyes, those glassy blue eyes, glowed faintly in the dark. And in those dreams, she was always whispering the same words, "You can't let me go." Emily woke, drenched in sweat, heart racing. But what terrified her most wasn't the dream. It was the faint melody that lingered in the air even after she woke. A song. A voice singing in the dark. By now, the Madonia house no longer felt like a home. It was a cage. Emily barely slept. Every night brought something new: scratches on doors, footsteps running down halls, faint songs drifting from empty rooms. The doll was no longer just a presence, it was a shadow that wrapped itself around their lives, tighter with each passing day. It tried to keep control. He called electricians to check the wiring, plumbers to explain the noises, even a priest who muttered Latin prayers and sprinkled holy water in every room. But no matter what they did, the house rejected peace. The doll always came back. If they threw it away, it reappeared. They locked it in a cabinet, the lock snapped open. If they burned it, they hadn't dared try. It was nearly midnight when it began. Emily woke to a faint sound. So faint she thought it was the wind at first. But as the seconds passed, she realized it wasn't outside. It was inside the walls, singing, "Let it go, let it go." But it wasn't Elsa's cheerful movie voice. It was warped, broken, dragged low, like a record played at the wrong speed. Emily pressed her palms to her ears, but it didn't stop. The song was everywhere, the floors, the ceiling, the walls themselves humming with a voice that didn't belong. Matt stormed through the house, shouting, kicking doors open. But the song only grew louder, echoing until it drowned out his voice. The children cried from their room, screaming for their mother. Emily rushed to them, clutching them tight, whispering, "It's okay, it's okay," even though she knew it was a lie. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the singing stopped. The silence was worse, because from the living room came a new sound. Thump, thump, slow, deliberate footsteps. Matt grabbed the baseball bat he kept under the bed and crept toward the sound. Emily followed, heart hammering, every step heavier than the last. When they reached the living room, they both froze. There, in the armchair, sat the doll, not tossed, not slumped like plastic usually falls. No, it was seated, upright, as though it had placed itself there, waiting for them. Its plastic eyes glinted in the dim light. And in its tiny porcelain hands, smeared faintly with something dark, was a piece of paper. Matt's grip on the bat tightened as he stepped forward, snatched the note from its hands. He unfolded it with shaking fingers. On the paper in jagged handwriting were two words: "Let me." Emily's stomach dropped. Her voice cracked. "Let you what?" And then, without anyone touching, its mouth opened. "Intrer." The whisper was so soft, so human, Emily nearly collapsed. Matt cursed, grabbed the doll, and threw it against the wall. Its plastic body cracked, but as soon as it hit the floor, its mouth moved again. "Let me in." That night, neither of them slept. Matt sat in the kitchen with the bat beside him, eyes bloodshot, every light blazing. Emily clutched her children in her arms, rocking them until dawn, but exhaustion was no shield. The next evening, when Emily went to the bathroom to splash her face, she caught something in the mirror. Not her reflection. Behind her, the doll, standing on the counter. She spun around. Nothing was there. The counter was empty. But in the mirror, she still saw it, its head turning slowly toward her, its glassy eyes fixed directly into hers. Emily screamed, smashing the mirror with her fist. Shards fell into the sink, blood running down her hand. And through the ringing in her ears, she heard it again faint, crawling up from the shards on the floor. "Let me in." The following night, Matt finally snapped. "This thing isn't a spirit," he spat. "It's a parasite, a trick. I'm ending this." Emily begged him not to, but he wouldn't listen. He stormed into the garage, returned with lighter fluid and a matchbox. The doll was waiting in the middle of the living room, sitting perfectly upright again, as if daring him. Matt doused it in fluid, hands shaking, and struck a match. The flame flared, and for a moment, Emily believed it was over. The doll's dress caught fire, the plastic bubbling, the room filling with the acrid stench of burning. But then the flame went out, snuffed out, as though something had sucked the air from the room. The doll sat there, untouched, its dress unburned. And then it laughed. Not a recording, not a toy's programmed sound. A laugh, shrill, human, wrong. Matt staggered back, his face pale. "What the hell are you?" The doll's head turned toward him. "Let me in." The lights flickered. The house shook.
Oh.
The children screamed upstairs. Emily clutched them to her chest as Matt swung the bat again and again, smashing the doll into pieces. Plastic arms flew, the head cracked, the body split open. But when it was over, when the doll lay shattered across the floor, something moved inside the broken shell. A shadow. Not smoke, not dust. A figure. Thin, crawling, writhing as though alive. It slithered out, twisting across the floor like spilled ink, before vanishing into the walls. The house groaned. The air grew colder, and from somewhere deep inside the walls came the voice again. "Let me in." The storm outside had reached its peak. Rain hammered the windows and the wind howled as if the entire forest had come alive, shrieking in unison. Inside the cabin, Daniel's flashlight flickered one last time before it died, plunging him into a suffocating blackness. But the whispers, they didn't fade. They grew louder, weaving around him, overlapping voices of men, women, even children, crying, pleading, warning. Daniel stumbled forward, his breath ragged, until he reached the cellar door. It was slightly open now, creaking as if inviting him inside. His hands trembled, but something deep inside pushed him. He had to end this, no matter the cost. He pulled the door wide, and the stench of damp earth and decay rushed out, thick and suffocating. One by one, he stepped down into the darkness, each creak of the wooden stairs echoing like a drumbeat of doom. At the bottom, his phone cast a faint glow. That's when he saw them, not just shadows, but figures. Dozens of them, pale and hollow-eyed, standing in the cellar's corners. Their faces were warped, twisted by agony, their mouths open but making no sound. Yet Daniel heard them inside his head, flooding his mind. He fell to his knees, clutching his skull as the voices screamed, "Get out, or join us." Through the haze, Daniel saw the old journal lying on a dusty altar. Its pages fluttered wildly despite the still air. And carved into the wood beneath it were names, dozens of names, scratched deep into the surface. The last space was blank, waiting for him. A figure moved forward from the crowd of shadows, taller, darker, its presence suffocating. It pointed at Daniel, and with a deafening roar, the cellar lights that shouldn't even exist flared red. Daniel staggered up, snatched the journal, and shouted with every ounce of strength left in him, "I'm not yours." The shadow shrieked, the sound so sharp it felt like knives against his skin. Pages tore from the journal and flew into the air, burning in blue flame. The altar cracked in two, the ground shook, and the shadows writhed as if in pain. Daniel ran. Up the stairs, through the cabin, out into the storm. He didn't stop until his lungs felt ready to burst. Behind him, the cabin roared with a thunderous collapse, swallowed into the earth as if it had never been there. The whispers, finally silenced. For weeks afterward, Daniel tried to convince himself it was over. The nightmare had ended with the cabin's destruction. But late at night, when the world was quiet, he would sometimes hear it again, just faintly. His name, spoken in a whisper. One night when he looked at his bathroom mirror, he saw something scratched faintly across the glass. A name. His.